Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Drew. I'm an amateur runner in Flagstaff, Arizona. Today I'm going to be talking about how to build your own training plan. So probably for beginner or intermediate level runners, if you're curious about where to start, rules on how to structure your plan, or how to do certain things to reach a specific goal, whether it's a 5K or maybe up to a marathon. So stick around. I'm going to be telling you some basic rules of engagement on how to structure this plan, things you can do to be successful, and then also how to build out a specific plan based on different scenarios. So here we go. Let's get into it. Here are some basic rules for how to build a running training plan. So this rule can be for any runner. Starting with a base building period is generally a good idea. A base building period is when you do mostly easy running and maybe throw in some strides for some leg speed to build your efficiency and then also build your aerobic engine. So I always recommend starting with a base period. And then once you get into doing workouts, generally 2 to 3 days between your harder efforts is a good idea. For some runners that are more advanced, they might be doing things like back-to-back workout days, or maybe just one day in between specific hard sessions. I probably wouldn't recommend that to just your average everyday runner. Most people need about 48 hours to recover from a harder effort and make sure your body's absorbing the training. So that is a good general rule, 2 to 3 days between hard efforts. You also want to save at least one day a week for a long run. It helps build that strength in your legs to go a longer distance, and then also builds that aerobic development that you really want as a runner, because most forms of running, unless you're doing very short sprints, are highly aerobic. Even a 5K is very predominantly an aerobic activity, and it's going to require a lot of aerobic development, meaning efficiency from when you breathe that oxygen in, into how it's absorbed into your lungs, into your bloodstream, and then into your muscles. So you want to build that engine so that you're allowing your body to perform in the way that you would like it to. Adding strides before and during workout days. You can use strides to increase your leg speed, increase your running efficiency, and improve your running form as you do a lot of easy running. If you're doing mostly easy running and you're not incorporating any faster, short bursts of speed, your body isn't going to be building a lot of efficiency. You're just going to be building that aerobic development, which again is a good thing, but you definitely want strides to be incorporated as many days as you can, so that you build the efficiency so that when you need to use it in a race or in a harder effort, your body's going to be accustomed to moving in that in the most efficient way possible. And then also probably the most important one here, build based on your current fitness, not your goal fitness. A lot of people will have a really aggressive goal. I want to break 3 hours in the marathon, or I want to run a 7-minute mile for a 5K. One might think that training based on where you want to be would be a good idea, but training where you're at allows you to get the most volume at different intensities, and then your body's going to adapt along the way. So you'll basically plan on progressing from where you're at, which may be slower, it may be less aerobically developed than you'd like to be, but then you'll be progressing through your training and you'll be able to note improvements. If you start at your goal pace, you run the risk of burning out and going too hard in all your sessions, and you risk injury, illness, and other serious health concerns. Now let's talk building volume and intensity. So when someone's building up volume, I mean their total mileage or total time on feet. These are all different metrics to measure your volume. Your overall volume, you can measure it in miles, you can measure it in time, kilometers, whatever you want. But you want to be measuring that on a week-to-week basis, because as you progress, you want to increase that volume over time. In weightlifting, it's like time under tension. You might have a really short time under tension when you're starting to lift. But then as you do more, you're going to be able to lift longer and lift heavier. So it's the same with running. As you increase your running volume, your body will adapt. If you increase too quickly, then you run into problems. Again, health issues, sleep, recovery issues, injury, etc. So the 10% rule is a rule that I think it's okay in most situations. Advanced runners, or maybe even an intermediate, don't need to pay too much attention to the 10% rule if they have a good sense of their historical volume or their historical mileage. But for basics, it's actually a really good rule to follow. And it's on a weekly basis, you don't want to increase your volume more than 10%. And I would also quantify your intensity as much as possible. So that intensity also shouldn't increase too much. And the last thing you want to do is increase both volume and intensity at the same time. You can really run into big issues with overtraining if you do that. So take it slowly, let your body adapt, do a base building period, and then figure out from there where you want to be volume-wise and slowly work up to that. And the same goes for intensity. And then as you're building, it's also good to take a week, maybe a down week where you have less volume, or you can just take an easy week of easy running with maybe a few strides after every other day's run. And just to keep that volume steady, but lower the intensity. That'll allow your body to continue to develop aerobically while also taking a little bit of a break from some of the intensity. Based on what your goals are, you might want to adjust the focus of your training. So that means that you'll have different types of workouts for different goals. But there are still some general rules that you would want to follow. So doing weekly, comfortably hard threshold sessions is always a good idea. Your lactate threshold is something that is very important to incorporate on a weekly basis and just regularly in training so that it helps your body adapt to being more efficient at clearing lactate from your muscles, oxygen uptake during exercise, and it just accelerates that process. So keeping those comfortably hard threshold workouts as a staple in your training plan is a really good idea. I'll do a little bit more content on how to find out what your threshold is, but for now, you can just look into some online calculators or things like that. Usually they're based off of a recent hard effort or some sort of time trial that you've done recently. You can also use strides to improve your leg speed. I said that in the last one, but regardless of what distance you're training for, you want to incorporate strides in short bursts of faster running. Keep your leg speed up, keep your efficiency. It's especially helpful in marathon training when a lot of the training is just like longer threshold and slower, threshold to marathon pace stuff. So strides are very important to incorporate. I like them the day before a workout, and I also like them maybe 2 to 3 strides prior to actually executing one. And then also defining what your goal is for your speed work. People say speed work, they could mean a lot of different things. For an ultramarathon runner, speed work might be threshold or half marathon pace, even marathon pace. For someone who is a 100-meter sprinter, 200-meter sprinter, speed work is going to be a really, really high output in terms of anaerobic power. So I like to determine 2 different types of speed work that are generally applicable to most runners. Aerobic power and VO2 max, so those are similar, and then anaerobic power. And then at a high level, think short-term and long-term when you're thinking about your goals. In a marathon, you might have to prepare up to a year in advance, where a lot of these major marathons, you have to put in your application about 1 year in advance of the marathon. So if you're thinking about how you're going to perform 1 year from now, it's best not to think on a day-to-day basis of what you're doing right now, but more so, what are the milestones you're going to reach along the way in order to set yourself up to have a really good marathon block prior to the marathon. And that marathon block might only be 8 to 12 weeks, it might be 16 weeks, but whatever it is, you're going to set yourself up for that with short-term goals and then reach that long-term goal through just consistency and execution in a lot of those workouts. Okay, so now let's get into a few examples of specific training plans and ways that you can structure your week. These are based on 3 different scenarios, 3 different types of runners, and different goals. These can be basic or kind of intermediate plans. If you're an advanced runner, some of this stuff might seem basic, but these general rules are applicable to any training plan whatsoever. Here I have 3 scenarios. First, we'll focus on this top line here. This is for someone, I have 93.8 kilometers planned for the week. for those who are functioning in miles, that is roughly, what is that? So that is just under 60 miles for this top line here. A couple things to point out. I have one speed workout, which is some 200s, 20 times 200. I tried to keep this really basic so that it can be very clearly defined. What's a speed workout, what's a tempo workout, etc. So this one has one speed session, one 30-minute threshold session, and then one long run on the weekend. I also put in those strides prior to each workout session. So usually I'll do easy running every day. If you're someone who doesn't run 7 days a week, let's say you run 6 days a week, swap one of these for a rest day. So we could put a rest day in here instead of that 10K. And what would that bring that up to? Down to 83.8 kilometers, that's roughly 50 miles, or you can leave that 7th day in there. So this week is pretty basic, based on, again, one speed session, one threshold session, and then a long run with some easy running in between and some strides. Generally, 2 workouts per week is a good rule of thumb. If you're doing maybe a higher volume or higher intensity per session, that 2 workouts per week is generally pretty good. Some people consider a long run a workout. If it's just an easy run, it's for a long time, I don't necessarily consider that a workout. If I go steady, which usually I go pretty steady on a lot of my long runs, then maybe I'd consider that a quality session. In that case, it would be about 3 quality sessions per week. So this would be for someone that's a pretty versatile plan of one speed session, one threshold session, and one long run. That can build fitness pretty much for any distance, 5K and up. For this next one, I shifted to how I usually function during a marathon training block. I'm someone who doesn't have a ton of time for recovery. I'm usually working during the week, taking care of my family, and also trying to squeeze my training in between. So for me, again, I stick to that 2 quality sessions per week to keep things in a sweet spot where I can manage a lot of the higher intensity, but then also recover pretty well and still get the miles in. So here, same thing. If I'm running 7 days per week, I have a 10K easy each day. There's some strides prior to workouts. This one I did incorporate a little bit of threshold, so 4 times 3K and then 4 times 200 meters. For me, I like to do break out some of my threshold sessions so that the intensity can be a little bit higher, and I'll get that higher intensity during a marathon cycle when the intensity is usually pretty low, and then also throw in some extended strides, which is essentially what the 200s function as, after the threshold. So I wouldn't do it before the threshold because then you're actually building up some lactate in your legs prior to a lactate threshold session, which that would kind of negate the purpose of training at threshold, which is to get your body to be more efficient without lactate or with low levels of lactate. So generally, incorporating those 2 things, try and keep the tempo or the threshold prior to the higher intensity, and then also strides prior to a longer session. In this longer session, I just did a basic long run of about 30K, starting easy, progressing for about 10K, progressing for a 10K at a more steady pace, and then wrapping up with a 10K at marathon effort. That's a steady progression through the whole run. Personally, I find those really mentally challenging because progressing from an easier effort into a harder effort with no break for 30K is quite a long time to be really focused on the intensity. So that can kind of train you for some of that marathon intensity and endurance as well. And again, total miles, for the sake of this plan, I just put in a 10K easy run every day. That's just a reference point. You can run whatever your mileage is, use your workouts as some like a guiding light for what that higher volume should be in those higher intensity days, and then just fill in all the blanks to get to the overall volume that you want to get to. And then this last week, I put an 8K easy run every day. This is more like a 5K training plan for someone who's maybe training at an average amount of mileage or lower mileage, but just a 5K easy run every day, some strides. You can increase that mileage as much as you need based on your volume. And then something like a 6 times 1K, which functions as like a 5K effort or like a VO2 max type effort, very challenging workout, 90 seconds rest, and then another workout on the Friday, which would be a mixed pace, highly speed oriented, 200, 400, 600, kind of a ladder workout and repeating that a few times. And then a steady long run, which also is a little bit of a higher intensity, and for about 21K. So that's something where in a 5K training plan, you might have 3 really high intensity quality sessions while focusing a little bit less on that volume that you would need for something like a marathon. So I try and mix it up based on what's the goal. Is it highly speed oriented, something like a 5K, 3K, 5K, 10K, or if you're going toward a half marathon or marathon, you might go to one of these 2 weeks up here. And another thing I'll just emphasize is that the 2 quality sessions per week or 3 quality sessions, like in the 5K plan, that's just based on what you're comfortable with and what your body's able to handle. So if you can't handle the intensity of 3 sessions per week, which can be very challenging, then just shift over to two quality sessions and you can do an easy long run on the weekend. Or maybe one really high quality speed session during the week, and then maybe on the weekend you have like an up-tempo long run, mixed pace long run, something like that. And I'm also someone who really believes in the power of lifting weights and staying strong as a runner. So what I like to do is double up my sessions, my weight sessions, with a quality running session. So on like a Tuesday, Friday week, I might lift on that Tuesday and Friday. That would be lifting legs both of those days. And I would mix up the type of lifting that I do so that I'm not stressing too much of the same like core mechanics on each of those days. And then also on that Sunday, depending on how intense the long run is, if it's a really intense long run, I might not lift. But if it's something I can handle, some lifting afterward, I'll also lift after a long run. Same goes for the rest of these training plans. All right, there you have it. A little bit of different scenarios and examples of how to structure a training week, but the broader training plan of week to week, month to month, that's something that would take a lot more time to get into. So if you don't have a coach, if you have some questions, reach out to me, ping me in the comments. What would you like to see? What have you struggled with in building your own plan? And maybe I can address it on a future video. But for now, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. Happy running.